What is up, Make Pop Music? So good to see you again. Thank you so much, Austin, for having me back. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Chris. I'm an orchestral composer, a producer, arranger, and a songwriter as well. And yeah, I'm just so thankful and happy to be back on the channel and share a little content with you guys today, considering the most essential orchestral libraries that I think will create a really nice palette for you and give you some really good options if you're looking for that orchestral sound in addition to your pop productions. So this is like perfect for you if you really are a pop producer, but you're just thinking, okay, I need some strings to spice up the overall mix, or I want some brass to really carry the lead lines. I'll give you some options in this video to consider. Ones that I think are really easy to use, really playable, and sound great. And I'll start with some free options as well as some really affordable ones, and then we'll move into kind of the individual libraries that I personally recommend on a daily basis, that I personally use. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, where you're kind of interested to see the different strings on the market, the different woodwind libraries, different brass, percussion, things like that, I've actually put together an entirely free guide called my Sample Library Buyer's Guide, and it's the first link in the description box below if you want to check it out. It's totally free, but it's basically like a PDF condensing the libraries that I use on a daily basis into this one guide, and you can check it out to see like all the equipment that I use and that I personally recommend it because I get those questions all the time. So it's 100% free if you want to check it out, and it's my gift to you for watching this video. So anyway, let's get into it. First one I want to talk about is Spitfire Audio. I'm sure you've probably heard of Spitfire before, even in passing, but they have a system called Labs, and this has been out for years now, but basically it's a collection of free instruments, totally available to download, no catch or anything. You just sign up your email address, you go on their mailing list, and you have access to these free instruments. So if we just take a look here, they have all these different instruments that you can download for absolutely free: strings, guitars, pianos, brass, drums, vocals, percussion. And you can really get pretty far just by using the free stuff. You'll notice these are kind of like niche instruments though. So tape orchestra, kind of a saturated orchestra, lap steel guitar, guitar harmonics, textural pads. So these things won't be useful in every single situation, but they're really nice to have as add-ons to, spice up your mix a little bit. They've also got something called the BBC Orchestra Discover Edition, which is free if you wait 2 weeks and fill out a survey on their website. If you don't want to do the survey, then it's $49, but I personally waited the 2 weeks. and yeah, they've just got lots of stuff, and they're adding more and more every day. The soft piano, strings, and drums and electric piano are kind of standouts for me personally. I like to use those quite a bit. But overall, their system is really, really nice. And they don't run in contacts. They run in their own player. I think it's just called the Spitfire player, which is really cool. And yeah, let's move on to the second company, Orchestral Tools. And they have a free instrument using their own player called the Sine Player. I'm a big fan of OT, and their free product is called Layers. So this is essentially a chord library where you press a note on your keyboard and it basically plays a pre-orchestrated chord. So these live musicians were actually playing these chords together, and then when you press the next note, it transitions to another chord. And so you can create these really beautiful background textures to fill out the arrangement, right? Just by the click of a note. So that's really nice, totally free, and you get a sense of how their instruments sound and work in their player. So that's really nice. And the other one I want to talk about that's also free is Project Sam's Free Orchestra. So this is basically a library comprised of 12 to 13 patches from their core libraries, like the Symphobia series and their other products in their line. And it's really nice. They have like strings, they have brass patches, they have choir patches, they have different effects in there as well. So it's really, really nice, and it sounds really good. One more I want to mention is Sounds Online, and this is the one that I believe Austin uses, is Composer Cloud. So this is very affordable if you're not like 100% invested in orchestral composition, but you just want to have access to orchestral sounds when you need them, then East West is a very good way to go as well. And it's $20 a month. You can basically download any of their libraries. You have complete access to everything as they come up with more stuff. And the most well-known series from East West is called the Hollywood Orchestra. So strings, woodwinds, brass, and percussion, this series right here. very popular on the market for composers on a budget. And so yeah, it's available to you for a low price of $20 a month if that's something you're interested in as well. So let's move on to the ones that I personally use myself. And I want to start off with the Orchestra Complete 2. So this is an all-in-one library that basically contains the individual sections, but what really makes this library stand out is the engine that it ships with. So this was developed by Sonuscore and Best Service. And basically, if I just play a note here, have a listen to this. So really cool, right? And basically, these are not loops, by the way. This is basically the engine taking the individual instruments that you've selected to put in these slots, and they're basically creating patterns from those samples. And so you can change it up. You can decide, let's say I want a brass, let's say I want French horn, and I want them to play marcato instead. And so the combination is now going to sound slightly different because you've got a horn in there. Kind of hear the horn in there as well. But yeah, and this is called one of the animations, by the way. They have different categories, but here there are all different options you can choose from. So for example, if I want choir of Mensa Stains, this is a really just basic patch. They give you a choir. And it's been coming with updates over the years to add kind of additional content to it. So you can play it for its individual sections, you know, for strings, woodwinds, brass, and percussion, but the engine is what's going to give you completed orchestrations at the click of a note, which is really, really nice. So definitely one to consider, and it's quite affordable as well. I think it's like $2.99, $3.99 or something. So if you need a library that basically does it all, and it's pretty lightweight on your computer, then this is a really good option to consider. The other one I want to talk about really quickly is Berlin Orchestra Inspire. And this is basically from Orchestral Tools. They've taken instruments from their Berlin series, which is kind of a full symphonic series. They've sampled all these individual instruments in depth. And so they've compiled this all into the Inspire library. And one of the really cool patches is called the Full Orchestra patch. They have a folder here called Full Orchestra, and they have sustains, which are just held notes, right? Staccatissimo are really short notes, so it kind of sounds like this. So beautiful sound, and very, very cinematic, right? You really hear the scoring stage sound really start to come in and fill up the rest of the spectrum, which is beautiful. So this is a really good library if you're looking for something that's also lightweight, gives you a bunch of instruments all in one package. They give you the individual sections as well. You have you have sections here, the whole ensemble, first chairs, which are basically kind of solo instruments, high strings, low strings, and octaves. Woodwinds, whole ensemble. They give you solo instruments here, flute and clarinet with legato as well, brass as well. So they give you solo horn and trumpet. So you don't get every single thing, right? You don't get all the solo instruments or whatever, but it gives you a taste of what their Berlin series has to offer. So that's a cool option as well if you're looking for something that's more, kind of more affordable and doesn't cost, thousands of dollars. Let's move on to dedicated section libraries. So if I had to recommend like a single string library for the pop producer, or maybe someone who's looking for smooth legato lines, right, to carry melodies, Cinematic Studio Strings is probably my first go-to option. So let me just play the violins a little bit for you here. So it's really interesting. This library basically comes with a very simple patch structure. They really only have like 5 or 6 patches, and one for each, particular section of the string orchestra. And you basically go between articulations within some of these patches here. So the staccato has 4 different types of short notes. The higher the wheel goes, the longer they are. But basically, when you ride the mod wheel down, then it goes into shorter notes. And this is kind of unique to this library, I think. But overall, the tone and the playability and the smoothness of the legato is what really stands out to me. So if you're looking for a library that plays melodic lines in a very smooth and connected way, then this is one that you should really consider picking up. Another alternative is Cinestring's Core from Cinesamples, and it has a very Hollywood sound to this one as well. The way the articulations are laid out are basically without the pedal, short notes, and then they also have legato, but with the pedal held down. That's the interesting thing about this library. You hear how the sound is a little bit more raw. You hear the bows on the strings a little bit more. So it's a different tonal signature. The Cinematic Studio strings is a little bit darker. Cinestring's Core is a little bit brighter. And so you want to listen to different walkthroughs and reviews of different libraries before really making a decision, because these cost hundreds of dollars, and you don't want to throw your money away, of course. It has to fit your personal workflow for sure. But yeah, these are 2 libraries that I definitely recommend when it comes to strings. Let's move on to Woodwinds. So these are kind of the neglected part of the Orchestral family, but there are some really cool options out there. So the first library I recommended, and the core library I use all the time for Woodwinds, is Berlin Woodwinds from Orchestral Tools. It is a little bit more expensive, but it does give you individual instruments with lots of articulation. So here's the flute. Okay, so yeah, this is basically the type of thing that applies for all the different instruments. They actually give you multiple of each instrument as well. So there's like 3 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 bassoons, like 2 clarinets or something like that. Really, really detailed sampling if you like to write for woodwinds. If you don't want individual instruments, you can go for something like Holly Woodwinds from Cinesamples, which is right here. And they basically give you 3 styles of, 3 categories of patches. One is keyboard patches, which are basically playable. You can play chords, you can play sustains, you can play staccato. So, you can look at all these things: octaves, major, minor triads, tremolos. Then probably what the library is known for the most is like scales. Different types of scales. You get tonal rips, you get atonal rips, you get octatonic scales. So it's really interesting. And then finally you get textures and effects. But yeah, this sound is heard all over the world in commercials and stuff, and it sounds like this. Right? And you can change the keys as well. So if I want to go to D major, for example, I just do a key switch by pressing one of the notes in this red area at the bottom. So for example, I want E flat major, I play the E flat, and now I can get an E flat major scale. So it goes from tonic to tonic. You can go 2 octaves, 1 octave. You can also go from dominant to dominant, or the 5th to the 5th, 2 octaves, 1 octave, 2 octaves down, 1 octave down, and then 2 octaves up and 2 octaves down. So a lot of options there, which are really, really nice to have. I love the option we can go from dominant to dominant. Very, very classic, you know, very film score heavy type of thing. Very John Williams-y. Okay, so those are the 2 libraries I recommend for woodwinds. And then moving into the brass, the one core library I use all the time is Cinebrass, and it still stands the test of time, but it's also by Cinesamples, Cinebrass Core. Cinebrass Pro is like the expansion library. It's like double the size, but it's all unique sample content. So let's take a look at the trumpets. It sounds like this. Okay, let's check out the solo horn, and this is true legato. So this library is really known for its quality of sound and also just the fullness of and the roundness of the tone, you know, that fills up the scoring stage really beautifully. And this is actually the first Cinesymphony library that the guys at Cinesamples actually made. Then they made the woodwinds, then the, you know, percussion and the strings, but the brass have really stood the test of time in many composers' palettes. So definitely one I can recommend, and it goes on sale a couple times a year, so keep your eyes out. Okay, and for percussion, which is the last main core section of the orchestral family, we have Cineperc, which is basically the only percussion library I really use on a regular basis because it contains all the essentials plus others. So the core library has everything you need: timpani, bass drums, snare drums, cymbals, you know, glockenspiel, tubular bells, so on and so forth. Then you have the Pro library, you have Epic, and auxiliary percussion. So Pro library contains things like a drum kit, which I like to use, chimes, tempo blocks, typewriter, you know, whistles, things like that. Really interesting things. Epic, of course, is like more epic percussion, and auxiliary is just stuff like, I think, shakers, bongos, congas, talking drums, things like that. But anyway, let's go over some of these sounds here in the core library here. So. Right? So that you can hear the punch and the immediacy in those samples. And then when we play the lower sections here of the piano, you can actually create your own rolls, and it ends off with a nice hit at the very end. So really cool programming there. Let's move on to the bass drum. I reloaded the snare there as well. Okay, so here's the bass drum. Right, so obviously the harder that you press, the more the samples are gonna trigger the hard hits of the drum. So it's velocity based, which applies for most percussion libraries. Then we have the snare drums. Right, so again, a really cool sound recorded at a scoring stage, so you do get that reverberant sound, but you can always tone it down to just the close mics if you want, mid-room for more, a little bit more space, and then ambient, trailer mix, and custom mix. You can create your own from there. Orchestral cymbals. So lots of different like closed, open hits, you know, dampened stuff, lots of choice there. And then in the previous video, a lot of people were asking what harp I was using. So Cine Harps is the harp that I use. And it not only comes with a playable harp, but it also has glissandos that are recorded as well, glissandi. It also comes with 2 extra harps for playable harps, then some really cool effects as well. So here's this what this sounds like. So beautiful, full, rich sound in the harp there. Let's move on to Choir, and this is a library that just came out very, very recently, and it's called Choir Essentials by Stratocaster Sampling. A very interesting library. It's basically taken from their larger choir libraries, and it comes with these syllables here: ro, da, ria, mo, and she. It also has some legato patches in there as well, with like children choirs and things like that. So it comes with performance patches and it comes with legato patches, as you can see. Okay, so it sounds like this. Right, and the great thing is that it comes with different mic positions, so if you want a closer sound, you can disable the Decca and the hall mics, and vice versa. So yeah, this library is really nice, and I could definitely see myself using it as more of a pad function. If I want to detail the choir library, there are more options out there. Things like Oceana from Performance Samples, or Voxos from Cine Samples. There's also libraries like Olympus, I think, from Sound Iron, and Requiem from I think it's ADO, not quite sure. But yeah, there's different options out there. And then piano-wise, Cine Piano is always my go-to trusted piano. It's actually the very top here at my contact libraries tab. And yeah, it sounds like this. I don't think you're going to get a cleaner, more gorgeous sound than that, personally. I love it. And then finally, for sound design, I love Elysian from Sonuscore as well. And it's basically like a sister library to the Orchestra Complete, like we showed at the very beginning. And it sounds like this. That's so cool. You can literally just load in one of these spheres, pulses, or animated patches. Let's try another one. Let's see, colonization of Mars. Okay. Right, so it's great because the lower the mod wheel is, the less of the instruments that will actually come out. But as you push it up, you can hear how the instruments get louder and they get more involved, which is really cool. And then you can individually go into the arpeggiation and fiddle around with it as you like. So very, very flexible library. Yeah, just very cool for those textured moments that you need some movement and flow in your mix. So anyway, that is an overview of the absolute essentials that I personally recommend for orchestral cinematic music. If you're a pop producer looking to add some orchestral sounds to your template and you are into some dedicated sections, then I hope that these helped you. And yeah, and for like individual instruments and solo instruments, we can do a totally different video on that. But those are also pretty well sampled in the in the sample world, in the orchestral world. But yeah, there's just so many options out there today, but I just wanted to share with you like my absolute favorites that I would personally recommend. If someone came up to me and asked me, oh, what string or what woodwind library would you recommend if I just had to choose one? Then that's what I would say, all these libraries that I just shared with you here today. So if this type of thing interests you and you want to dive a little bit further into more of my suggestions, then I highly recommend you download my Sample Library Buyer's Guide. It's an absolutely free, and it's the first link in the description box below. But again, it'll just give you a sense of the libraries I use on a daily basis, give you some of the reasons why I love them so much, maybe why I don't use some others, and hopefully it will help you if you're on the market for some new libraries, but you're just not really sure which way to go. I'll share with you the ones that I use pretty regularly. So thank you so very much for watching. Again, I want to thank Austin for having me back on. Really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.